What's going on, guys? This is the Red Rogue, and I hope you're all doing well today. Now, I have been a staunch and loyal defender of Ardenweald since the beginning of Shadowlands. I have earned the title of Winter's Envoy, and have all the accolades and respects of my people. And I'm really bored. So, I decided to see what it'd be like to be Necrolord for a week. So, this video will be my thoughts and opinions of what it's like to be a Bone Spike Chucker. So, thank you so much for joining me today. Now, let's talk Necrolord. So as a heads up, this isn't really a guide or anything for Necrolord Rogue yet, but I do plan on putting one together in the coming days so I can give you all some pointers and advice for how to make the most of the Covenant. This will focus primarily on the gameplay differences you might feel or experience if you've never been part of the Necrolord Covenant as a rogue, so hopefully this will give you a bit more insight on what to expect if you're on the proverbial fence with Covenant swapping. First and foremost is Serrated Bone Spike, the Necrolord Rogue specific ability. This is an extremely cheap, ranged combo point generator that also puts a bleed on your targets. The more enemies with this bleed active, the more combo points you generate with it. It has a 30-second recharge rate, and you can have up to 3 charges of Serrated Bone Spike at any given time. The initial hit does a pretty solid chunk of damage, and the damage over time is actually a pretty decent amount of damage on targets that last a while. This ability is pretty solid as both Assassination and Outlaw, though it seems to be a little less impressive feeling as Subtlety, at least from my personal experience with it so far. It can feel a bit overwhelming in some situations, I'll say that right off the bat. This mainly stems from the fact that you will receive a free charge of Serrated Bone Spike whenever a target dies with the Bone Spike bleed active on them. This means that in like Mythic Plus or raid fights with lots of adds, you'll end up using a lot of Serrated Bone Spike. Due to this, I personally use a mouse over macro for the ability, which I'll leave in a pinned comment below if you want to try it out yourself, and basically I do that so I can dot up as many new targets as I can so my subsequent Bone Spikes will generate more and more combo points. As Outlaw in particular, this can feel a bit messy at times if you're also using the Marked for Death talent, since that also resets on death on an afflicted target. Bouncing between the two moves means you'll be generating an absurd amount of combo points in some situations, which, as I mentioned, can overwhelm you really quickly if you don't keep track of your stacks of Bone Spike and the cooldown of Marked for Death. I ended up making a couple little weak ores for Bone Spike and Marked for Death so that I wouldn't waste as many opportunities to use either of the moves, and it seems to help a bit. Basically, they just glow when I'm in combat and I have Marked for Death off cooldown, or if I have 3 stacks of Bone Spike. Once I'm out of combat, they stop glowing because otherwise that'd get really annoying really quickly. The big interest that drew me to giving Bone Spike a shot was mainly for Mythic Plus, and for Outlaw in particular since the large damaging hit of Bone Spike can be blade flurried. Combining that with the Master Assassin Legendary feels really strong, as I can slap out some hard-hitting combo point generators and dump them into dispatches and between the eyes as needed. I'm still getting the hang of using it in higher keys as I've mainly been spamming low-level stuff just to boost my renown up quickly, though I did do a couple 14s and 15s just to give it a shot and I was pretty happy with it. For Assassination in Raid, and really for single target because that's what I usually play Assassination for, the extra bleed from Serrated Bone Spike offers an additional 5% boost to the Doomblade legendary effect, though it doesn't feel like some huge damage difference since it's only an extra 5%. The extra combo points are a welcome addition to Assassination though, at least for me since I prefer a bit faster of a playstyle anyhow. Another nicety for Bone Spike as Assassination is that it is buffed by the Potent Assassin Mastery, which, while we might not stack master as Assassination, we do get a base amount of like 13 or 14% or something like that at level 60, so no matter how much mastery you wear, Bone Spike will always do a little bit more damage as Assassination. In pure single target situations, Serrated Bone Spike can feel a bit less impactful, though the permanent dot damage and ability to have a ranged combo point generator are kinda nice. I've found that instead of just blowing through all of my Bone Spike charges at once though, I like to hold on to 1 or 2 for a bit, since it kinda lets me store them so I can generate a lot of combo points or damage in a given window of opportunity, like during Vendetta, or if I roll like Broadside or Ruthless Precision or something as Outlaw. Not entirely sure what the best times to dump Bone Spike are yet, but those feel the best and make sense to me, so I'll be fiddling around with that a bit more as I practice. For the Covenant-wide ability Fleshcraft, I personally think it's an okay extra ability, though in less than a week I already greatly miss Soul Shape. The extra mobility was so handy, and I find myself not using Fleshcraft as often as I probably should be. They did reduce the time it takes to channel the Absorb Shield with patch 905, which is nice, and the fact that you get 20% reduced damage taken makes it kind of like a mini defensive. However, having to stand still and hopefully not get hit by things in the interim is kind of irksome, though I probably just need to play around the ability more to get the most benefit out of it, so I know when to use it and when not to use it, so I can't say I dislike it, but it just feels a bit cumbersome since I'm kinda used to running around spastically while doing all my rogue stuff. I have noticed while using Merileth though, if I just trigger the ability and move immediately so it just cancels it, then it'll start being able to absorb the enemy essences so you get all those passive buffs, and it also reduces the cooldown of it, so even if I don't wait the entire duration to channel it up to the full Absorb Shield, I just need Fleshcraft to be on cooldown so that it can start proccing those extra buffs from the dead enemies. So I feel that helped a little bit since it makes me get more buffs out of the ability, but it also makes me have to remember to use it on cooldown every time, which I'm kind of forgetful with still. While I don't have a ton of keys to practice in or to showcase my damage or performance difference, I've so far noticed a respectable improvement in my overall damage output, which was nice to say the least. With a bit more practice and learning how to line everything up more, I can definitely see why Necrolord has become such a popular choice for Outlaw, and even as Assassination, I think it feels pretty good too. As some of you can probably tell, I haven't mentioned Subtlety basically at all. While I did dabble with the ability in Subtlety and LFR just to try it out, the only really impressive or meaningful interaction I felt that it gave with Subtlety was a tiny bit more 2 to 3 target damage due to the Bone Spike bleed, though not really that much. Generally in multi-target, you're just casting Shuriken Storms and dumping them into black powders. So Bone Spike as a combo point generator isn't quite as impressive when you get a combo point for literally every enemy you hit anyhow. The extra bleed damage and slightly higher combo point generation in low target situations, or when I could get a couple free charges from death resets, did help a bit with Shadow Dance uptime, but not really anything super crazy, at least from how it felt for me. Overall, I am enjoying being a Necrolord at the moment, though I'm still up in the air whether or not I'll stay as a Bone Spiker or not. Ironically enough, my little Mythic Plus group doesn't have a Night Fae if I'm not the one, so it's kind of important for us since we normally have one of every Covenant, which is very helpful. The rotation and gameplay is very different than boring old Sepsis, which is a breath of fresh air for me at this point, and I have noticed an improvement in overall damage even without fully maxed out Renown yet. I'll still definitely be putting together a tips and tricks guide for Necrolord once I get a bit more practice time in with it, and again, it's entirely possible I'll just stay with it as I am quite a bit more of a fan of the ability than I originally gave it credit for. Anyways folks, I hope this little overview of my thoughts and opinions on Necrolord Rogue proves useful to you if you've been on the fence about switching Covenants or not. I can't say for sure if you'll like or hate the playstyle, as it does require a lot of management of Bone Spike charges and resets and all that, especially in Mythic Plus. In single target, it's kinda whatever, you just hit it every now and then so you don't overcap. But in Mythic Plus, or anytime you're getting a lot of resets, I really recommend like a mouse over macro, or maybe even some weak ores, just so you can track your charges a little easier. If this video did prove helpful to you then, please consider leaving a like, a comment, or maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. It's all really appreciated and helps a lot with the channel's growth. And as always, my gratitude to you, all of my viewers, and especially my patrons, who all help make these Shiba Shenanigans possible. Thank you all so much for watching. This is the Red Rogue, and I'll see you guys around.